Advanced Colorado Broadband Community Roundtable. So welcome. Thank you guys for joining us. Just a couple quick reminders about what we do on this call. The entire Broadband Office staff is here. So we're here to answer your questions, provide guidance, just help you through anything that may be on your mind right now in terms of applying for advanced CPF grants or anything else broadband related. We're going to give a few updates. So we ask that you just hold your questions for a moment. And then as soon as the Broadband Office staff gives a few updates, we'll open it up for Q&A. So with that, I'm going to start. Oh, and we are recording the call too, just to make sure everybody is aware. We will repost it to the website along with these slides after the call. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Delia to start us off.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. In the month of August, we ended our summer roadshow with a visit to the Southern Ute Indian tribe and the Mountain Ute tribe in the southwest of Colorado. In consultation with the tribe, the CBO learned so much of the plans that the tribes have for broadband digital equity, and both tribes have, have underway. Saying that, the CBO staff would like to thank all of you, everyone that hosted us during this summer for our roadshow. Our staff was able to visit and talk with the stakeholders from all the regions in Colorado, and we appreciate every question asked and every feedback that was given to us. Next slide, please. I'm very excited about this slide. It's talking about the Digital Inclusion Week that is coming pretty soon, the first week of October, from October 2nd through the 6th. And during that week, the CBO, together with OFW, Office of eHealth Innovation, and the Office of Lieutenant Governor Primavera, will be running a social media campaign and share a digital inclusion video promoting awareness. And what we're asking from all of you is to support the Digital Inclusion Week by promoting it in your social media. You can promote ACP, you can put different blurbs in your social media about the importance of digital inclusion. And we ask that you use the hashtags Digital Equity Now and DIW 2023. You can take this opportunity also to promote any events that your organization is working on to close the digital gap. Back to you, Lauren.
Thank you. All right, I'm now going to talk pretty high level about the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Grant Program from the NTIA. There's quite a few steps that we are working on our end to prepare the grant program to deploy this money next year. And we just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on and next steps. So the 5-year action plan, our office published on August 14th. It is available on our website. And it basically establishes Colorado's broadband goals and priorities and our vision for BEAD funding. It also outlines the current state of broadband and just what it looks like in terms of how many locations and households need to be served. It also discusses barriers and obstacles to deploying broadband in our state. So some specific things to Colorado are like topography and the rural characteristic of our state. But also, probably every state's facing workforce and supply chain barriers as well. So it just kind of outlines some of the things that the state is aware of in terms of barriers. The initial proposal, volume 1, was the next plan that was due to the NTIA. We published that on September 7th. And this is open for public comment. So we invite you to go to the website, read this plan, and submit your comment on it. It's fairly long, but I'll give you a couple highlights on what's in this initial proposal, volume 1. It explains our BEAD challenge process, which Megan is going to talk about here in detail in just a moment. It also outlines existing broadband funding, so all of the other state and federal funding programs that currently exist, and then how they will impact our plans for BEAD. It establishes the unserved and underserved locations from the FCC's National Broadband Map. Again, Megan will talk to that here in just a little bit, a little more. And then it does define our BEAD eligible community anchor institutions as well. We will incorporate feedback from volume 1 and into our volume 2 proposal, which we'll go into a little bit more detail about infrastructure, affordability, equity. And then we'll outline our plan for conducting local coordination, so working with communities like you, ensuring workforce readiness and how we'll distribute grants. After the volume 2 is approved, we will move into our challenge process. Again, Megan will talk about in a moment, and then that sub-grantee selection process is actually not going to happen until next year. But that's where we'll choose sub-grantees and turn that into the NTIA and work with them on approval. So much more to come on those last few steps, because we're still kind of at the top of this outline, but I'm going to hand it to Megan to talk a little bit more about the challenge process. So go ahead, Megan.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, so as Lauren said, the initial proposal, volume 1, outlines the BEAD challenge process. The bulk of that document is just all the details about the challenge process. So before we start the challenge process, we'll identify all the unserved and underserved locations in the state. We have a preliminary list of those locations attached to volume 1, which is about 236,000 locations. But that's before we do any what's called deduplication of funding. So we take, any areas that have been funded and those are taken off the eligible list. We'll update it based on updated FCC map information. So if it's served in the next reporting cycle, that'll get removed from the map. And that's what we'll post for the challenge process. So the BEAD challenge process is completely different than the FCC challenge process. So we're just trying to confuse you by using the same terms. So the BEAD challenge process, we'll run that in January 2024, and that's an opportunity for providers, nonprofits, and local and tribal governments to challenge the eligibility data that we post. So I want to make sure you all heard providers, nonprofits, and local and tribal governments are the only entities that are allowed to participate in that challenge process. So you all will play a really vital role in making sure that our eligibility data is as accurate as possible. So that's out for public comment right now. I would encourage you all to read that document partially so you can submit public comments and partially so you can get familiar with the process before we launch that in January. And I think that's all I have on that. And I'm handing it off to Brandy.
Actually, really quick, Megan, before you hand it off. Sorry, I was going to say, we got a couple of questions, or we have been getting a couple of questions about how can I prepare for BEAD and BEAD grant program, or the BEAD grant program. So I'd say our office recommends reading these plans in addition to the BEAD NOFO, but these plans are a great way to, like Megan said, familiarize yourself with what's coming in terms of BEAD and then what the state's planning to do. So I think that's a great point, Megan. If people familiarize yourself with these plans, you'll be ahead of the game when it comes time to apply for the grant program. So yes,
yeah.
And
if you do have questions, we can talk about, you can ask them later in this call or reach out to us at any time. We'll be sending out communications about running that process over the next couple months.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. So Brandy, we're going to hand it over to you to talk about the grant program that's going on now, so Advanced CPF.
Great. Thank you, Lauren, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining the call today. We have a couple of updates on the CPF grant program. We're rounding out, coming to the finish line. So we just wanted to kind of make you guys aware of just well, I guess two changes really. We extended the deadline again, just 1 week. The reason why we did that is if you are working in Zoom grants and are working and you have an active application, the workbook that we gave to you or distributed to in the program and uploaded has some calculation errors, mainly on the output tabs. And so, of course, you know, if I were you, I wouldn't want to submit a workbook that had any errors to a grant program. So we ended up realizing these errors based on stakeholder feedback, and Tilson, our consultant, put together a slimmed down version of the workbook that's also uploaded in Zoom grants. You have an option to either copy and paste your data into the slimmed down workbook, or if you have already filled out the original workbook, you can move forward with that. If you are using the existing workbook, you can just ignore the output tabs. I believe Tilson's on this call to explain if there are questions, but either one, not both. And you will not be penalized for either one. We just want you to make sure you submit the workbook with the inputs inputted. So that was this change. And so we decided just to give people an extra week to determine which workbook they want to use. And then just, you know, obviously making sure that everybody has the right information ahead of the deadline. In addition to the workbook change and the application extension, we are holding office hours. We started those yesterday, this week and next week. So those are set times you can see on the slide deck here. These are also on our website. So you can go to our website to sign up if you'd like to, or join. I don't think you have to register. You just have to jump on the call. So the office hours are for those that are still working through the application and the workbook. And you can ask us any questions. Tilson and our broadband, our program staff will be on those calls to help see you to the finish line if you're planning on making an application to the capital projects funds. Again, really want to apologize to stakeholders for not catching those errors ahead of time, but we appreciate your patience, and we just want to make sure that you guys are set up for success. So that's why we're making the two changes that we are, and also offering the office hours. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and wrap up. We are still planning on making November grant awards. That the schedule is pretty tentative right now, but that's what we're targeting. But if there's any updates to the award month, well, no, the award month notifications for November, we'll let you guys know. But it's kind of based on how many applicants come through the door. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you so much, and we'll open it up for questions, right, Lauren?
Yep. So now it's your time to ask us any questions you have. You can raise your hand and ask them to the group on camera, or feel free to drop them in the chat and I can read them aloud. So at this time, we'll take questions. All right, go ahead.
Hey, I had a question about enhanced ACAM, and if you had an early read on how much that would affect programs here in Colorado. And then also, you know, the rules are a little bit different for EACAM as far as what's defined as unserved. Do you know if CBO and NTIA will recognize unlicensed fixed wireless access that's built by EACAM to the 100 by 20 standard as served and not touch it? Or do you think those would be candidates for overbuild?
That's a good question, Craig. You know, as far as our position at the CBO's office, or at the CBO, you know, we're following the program guidelines for capital projects, funds, and BEAD. So that's kind of our broadband Bible, if you will. So any impact of ACAM and anything like that, you know, if it needs to be reflected in the program guidance at the national level. So forward on licensed and unlicensed spectrum, you know, a lot of that's going to be dictated by our federal guidelines. So I know that's not really a good answer. So, but we are tracking what's happening in that space, just so you're aware. But we can't really give you a definitive answer on something that's kind of still moving through the pipeline, if you will.
Okay, so you're saying no federal guidance on that point yet?
No, we haven't received anything specific. We are tracking the issue, but you know, we're following the letter of the law. So until some of those, if ACAM has an impact and we're allowed to, and the NTIA and Treasury have based on what the regulation is. So I think your question is probably more along the line of something like that. We got TIA whenever they're ready to do that.
Okay, I think I got it. I think you're breaking up a little bit, but I think we just wait and see what the guideline is. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all know Brandy lives and breathes the broadband connection troubles that many of us do in rural areas. So yeah, so Brandy, you were a teeny bit spotty on that, but yeah, Craig, if you have a follow-up question or anything like that, just let us know. Okay. Are there other questions out there?
I have maybe one or two more.
Go for it.
I've been working with some of the ditch companies up here in Weld County, and when I talk to like Lower Boulder, they've never heard of the Colorado Broadband Program. It's like a cow looking at a new gate to them. So they're unaware. So when you think about ditches being the most important people that we have to go through, other than like railroads, you know, what does a roadshow look like for these kind of companies who admittedly are really hard to contact because they often have a physical mailing address and only deal by like physical mail. So you know, they're a showstopper. They need to be made aware, but it's hard to reach them. So when you think about rights of way and easements, how do you think about that road show and what it means for progress with railroads, with ditch people? I think we've made good progress with CDOT, but in general, for right of way ease of access, how do you think about that?
So your question, if I'm hearing you right, and hopefully my connection's okay right now, but you're asking us how are we reaching out to ditch companies and the railroads about broadband?
Yeah, these are very important stakeholders, and I was surprised that they'd never heard of the Colorado Broadband Program. And you know, they can stop the whole program because they won't let you go under or over their ditch, and they're just not in the loop. So when you think about those important stakeholders, you know, what can we do to, you know, for outreach?
You know, if you run across people that don't know about the Colorado Broadband Office or, you know, the BEAD program or, you know, some of the things that are happening, you can always tell them to reach out to us. We haven't done any direct mailers, just because, you know, it probably cost us several million to mail every single address in the state. So, you know, we're relying a lot on our local partners to spread the word. You know, we visited all 14 management and planning regions this summer and more. And we host local meetings. We did that this summer quite a bit. We have our webinars. We have, you know, the local newspapers. We've done radio station features. You know, I think I said the listserv, but you know, we have about 10,000 people on our listserv. So, you know, if you come across somebody who, you know, is just completely, you know, unplugged, you know, I think it'd be helpful for someone like you to, you know, say, hey, you know, you should pass that information along to us who you're talking to so we can add them to our mailing list, our email mailing list. Or, you know, you can give them our information. It's really hard to reach every single person or every single entity that's involved in the broadband space. It's not just providers, you're right. It's people that own ditches, easements, rights of way. It's this whole ecosystem. And so, you know, with the resources we have, it's just really hard to get to every single potential partner. But if somebody doesn't know about it, you can certainly be a good ambassador and let them know about the broadband office. And we're also happy to host another meeting if we need to come up to a place like Weld County and do a convening of, you know, folks that have a role to play. So, you know, we if you have any contacts, we'd be happy if you shared them with us.
Yeah, these are just some of the big constituents like BNSF and the railroad folks that kind of operate, you know, up here. The Lower Boulder and their management companies, they run ditches throughout Boulder, Larimer, Weld, and so there's a few big ones that would probably be helpful to be in front of. But yeah, we can follow up.
And if you may,
Yeah, and we
ask.
talk to the railroads. We also talk to the railroads. We talk to you know, a lot of the folks that have a lot to do with the railroads. So, and we actually, Michael Murphy actually came from the railroads. So he I see you off mute. So it was very intentional for us to hire him because we wanted to have that railroad representative at the broadband office. Do you want to say something, Michael?
Yes, I was going to add, thank you for that input, Craig. And as information for everyone, I came from the BNSF specifically. I was in the telecom group, and I have reached out to my old team and the leaders there for conversations around right of way and, you know, warning them that this is coming and it's going to hit every state that they're in. So there's going to be permit requests. So we are in contact, reaching out to them. We will keep you guys posted if we get anything, you know, globally or identify any processes that need to change.
And I'm going
Again,
to
we don't really have
write email.
jurisdiction over the railroads either. So, you know, it's, you know, we try really hard to make sure we have those partnerships. But again, there's not much that the broadband office can do to influence the railroads. I'll just be honest.
Yep.
Delia, did you have something to say?
Yes, I was going to say, Craig, that I am going to put my email address in the chat, and feel free to contact my, share my information, and I will be happy to set up a meeting as soon as possible. I will be happy to do that.
That's great. Thank you. And then maybe a quick question for Megan.
Is there anybody else on the call that has any feedback or anything? Just want to make sure we.
I can
give
just
some
add
space.
that, you know, Craig or anybody else that submits a permit for a ditch crossing and experiences any delays or any resistance can just reach out for us to see how we can facilitate and help. That's it.
Sorry, Craig, did you have a question for Megan?
Yeah, maybe Colin. Do you have a preferred CRS or EPSG for designs that people submit for these programs? Should we be following the CDOT standards?
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question. I think when you're submitting your application, the guidelines in the application portal should tell you how to prepare that data.
Megan, I know Miriam is on from Tilson.
Okay.
Miriam, you're able to answer that question.
Yeah, we can also take it back if
Yeah.
we need to research it a little.
See, Miriam,
Hi,
are
good
you?
morning.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. Had to turn my video on and all those fun things. I believe it should say the type of application or type of form, excuse me. I'm thinking like 8 different things in the moment. That the the version of, all right, I'm just gonna stop for a minute and have a cup of coffee because I obviously need more coffee. That the form of maps and graphics that you're using are listed in the guidelines. But if you're talking about the standards that you need to build things in the rights of way to, that's a slightly different discussion. Standards, the design standards are different than the submission standards for an application. I just want to make sure we're talking about the right thing, design versus submission.
No, it's more about what projection do you use when you're working in Colorado for Tilson, or Megan, when you're working and doing your mapping in GIS? Are you using the CDOT standard? Because a lot of times if we have to go through a CDOT right away, they ask that it be done in like the 13 North projection. So is there guidance anywhere on that type of work?
We don't have any, I don't know if we have guidance listed anywhere.
It would be used as, I don't think we have that listed in the application guidelines either, but you should use the standard that is required for where applicants should use the standard for where they're required to build. So if CDOT has a standard that is specific to CDOT, then I would recommend using that. Otherwise, it could cause problems with permitting of CDOT. And I would say the same thing if you're working through a municipality that has other standards, that those need to be addressed as well. So applicants should use the standard for where they're building based on the jurisdiction or the entity that has those standards.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody from the community that wants to chime in, because this is the community roundtable? And I just want to make sure that we're giving you guys enough time to ask us any questions or let us know what you need from a community perspective. I know we highlighted a lot of information. The other thing that we're constantly looking for is feedback for how we can advocate for community's needs. I want to just make sure that we stay true to the stakeholders that are community on this call. All right. I don't see anybody in the chat asking any questions or giving us any feedback. So if there's nothing that anybody has for the broadband office for the September community roundtable, we can also give you 30 minutes back in your day. So if everybody's okay, we'll go ahead and conclude. And we will, yes, Craig, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a community question. So a lot of the community anchor institutions are gathering places around us ask, am I a community anchor institution? So they don't necessarily know. Like I had to talk the Frederick Firestone Fire Protection District people into listing as a community anchor institution. You know, they host training sessions there. You know, they do baby seat fitting, and they don't know. So they don't know if they're an anchor institution, but it's a community gathering place as well as a first responder location. Same for like Anderson Farms, which is a gathering place every fall for Fright Fest and the like, right? But would they consider themselves a community anchor institution? There are the NTIA guidelines, but do we adapt anything differently for Colorado?
No, we don't. So the NTIA definitions of community anchors are right in line with the state of Colorado. And the state of Colorado actually has additional classifications for community anchors. So all of the examples you just gave us, would be classified as community anchors under state statute and policy. Now, whether folks know that they're community anchors is always the question, because, you know, you can, I mean, there's a lot of community gathering spaces, and when you're in a rural place, you know, it's not always a traditional, like, hey, here's a library, you know, it could be a community center. So we have a really broad list of definitions of community anchors, which would include almost most scenarios for community anchors. And so if you want, they can email you the statute if you would like. And also in our volume 1, if you've read it, there's the classification of community anchored institutions, which include public safety facilities like what you're talking about.
Yep, I'll just grab it from there. Thanks.
Okay. And the statute's actually in our volume 1. So it's a pretty comprehensive listing of community anchors in Colorado. So most of those are going to be covered, whether they know they're a community anchor or not. And to be honest, the community anchor title isn't really a common title used in the field. So I'm not surprised that people don't necessarily know what community anchors are. And I really didn't know what community anchors were until I came to the state and started working on these programs, because that's what the federal government classifies them as. But when you're in local government, you don't say this fire station is a community anchor. Like, it's just not something that's common in the field. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, Melanie has her hand raised. Melanie.
Okay, go ahead, Melanie.
You can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I've had sound issues today. I just wanted to put in a plug for our every other month we do a digital equity committee meeting. I'm the digital equity manager and I work out of the Department of Labor and Employment. So if any of you all are interested in attending, it's just, you know, anybody's welcome to attend. We have some anchor institution stakeholders, we have libraries. This next one next week is going to be all around how libraries participate in the digital equity space and how you can connect with libraries to make sure you're including them in digital equity work in your communities. So I'm going to just throw the invite for the Zoom meeting in the chat. And if anybody's interested, again, you're welcome to come. It's at noon on Tuesday, September 26th.
Thanks, Melanie. I'll add that registration link to our follow-up notes as well. And just a couple things I wanted to note: the office hours that CBO and Tilson are hosting every day this week at noon and 2 o'clock every day next week are they're designed for you to come with any very specific questions about your application. So Zoom grants questions, any other kind of application question. So just to make sure everybody knew and was aware that those are available as well. And please raise your hand if you don't know how to access those. I can actually drop them in the chat, but we want to make sure we're providing as much support as possible these last 2 weeks. And just a quick note, I have a couple of people have emailed the office that apparently Zoom grants is down globally right now. So if you go into Zoom grants, it sounds like it's not going to be working at the moment. So maybe just, I don't know, give it an hour or so. Hopefully it's up and working before we have our office hour today, but we are aware of the issue and someone is working on it. Someone with the global power to work on that. So hopefully it's up and running soon. So just thank you for your patience with that. Okay. Any other questions, comments, things that the Broadband Office can help you with as communities? Okay, if not, just a couple reminders. Here's the programs team who are your direct contacts. You can always contact anybody at Broadband Office, but these folks are dedicated to specific regions. So hopefully you know them pretty well by now. I'm assuming you do. They're busy. So please feel free to reach out to them. And then a few ways to stay informed. Our next roundtable is Wednesday, November 15th. You can also email our advance email anytime. And then we also have newsletters. We're on Twitter. And then CBO in the news is another great way just to kind of follow what's going on with the Colorado Broadband Office and just broadband as a whole across the state. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we can give you guys some time back in your day. And thank you as always for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.